Welcome again. So, I will just begin from the slide where I left last time. So, these are brain, as you know, is a multimodal organ, modular rather, which has specialized areas, but all these specialized areas do not work in isolation, they associate with each other, and at the same time it is hugely parallelly distributed. It is not that you are hearing at one point and then you are looking at other point and feeling at other point, this all goes parallelly. Lot of data goes into the brain all the time, and as we go up, this is coalesced into certain is laced with emotion, and finally we will talk about it when we talk about how the brain actually builds up the whole thing. But right now amygdala, as I said, is considered to be the center of all emotional expression, emotional behavior, autonomic nervous system, as I said, involuntary control of lot of stuff what you feel, and endocrine system, which releases the stress hormone, especially something like cortisol. Again, this is the imaging. So, this is one of the theories which probably tries to explain in a more comprehensive model of what we are talking. Bauer's network theory, which says that emotions are nodes in a semantic network. Semantics, as you know, making meaning of the whole thing. So, and that is what was our mind doing, trying to make a meaning of the whole thing. They are nodes in a semantic network, they are like propositions. So, when there is an activation of network, they spreads in selective fashion to associated concepts, and when nodes activated above threshold, conscious experience of emotions result. So, what is exactly happening is there is a whole network right from what you see through your senses, from your environment. It has to reach a final thing where you have to have a conscious experience, and in the process the emotional nodes get activated. So, nothing reaches your brain, conscious mind, which has not touched the emotional center. So, absolute emotional as matter of fact, knowledge, objective, probably it does not exist, because in whatever process it goes, it will touch the limbic system and some node there which will insert its own meaning in the whole thing. This I talked about in one of the lectures, that this is Yerkes-Dodson law. It is related to anxiety, actually level of arousal. You know, little bit of anxiety is very good. If you do not have little bit of anxiety, you would not study or you would not push hard to achieve, and it is happy go lucky. So, little bit of anxiety is important. You get up in time and you really reach wherever you have to perform your duties, and that is how the world goes, but a little bit is good. If it goes beyond this, your performance actually dips down. And as a student, I think all of us would have experienced this, what we call a performance anxiety. You have prepared, you prepared well for your exams, and maybe by some quirk or some discussion or suddenly some thought gets into your head whether you will be able to pass or not, and just one day before, your mind actually starts hooking on to this thought of whether you are being able to do or not do. And so, by the time you reach, so little bit is fine, because if you feel one day before that okay, you are not fully prepared and you will not get desired marks, so you push yourself, take up your book again, reread, practice. So, you practice, you reach here, efficiency of performance. But what you do not know is this threshold, and the moment it goes beyond this, your performance dips down. So, little bit anxiety is better, rest is performance anxiety, and when you see the paper and by any chance if you can't get into the first question itself, or your mind just suddenly goes into this anxiety, so you know what happens. Your mind goes block. That is how anxiety blocks, performance anxiety. All of us have experienced it. So, what is the importance of all this? We talked about cognition last time, and now we are talking of let's just collect the gist of the whole thing till now. So, a self gets born with your neurons are in place when you are born, social cultural conditioning helps you make networks, help you make learning layer after layer, right from survival to knowledge to religion to myth to how to behave, which you get inputs from your parent and you want to condition your mind to how you should behave in certain situation. Knowledge base keeps changing as we learnt in the Piaget theory, whether it is phasic or like it is a continuous phase, you keep modifying knowledge through assimilation and accommodation, and that is how your thought develops, thinking. And thinking has its ultimately its own component like abstraction, like judgment, like problem solving or whatever way you are using it. And so, obviously, the natural corollary of it was through psychology and through ancient literature and everything. The natural corollary was that if it is thought and if the cultural conditioning makes it and if your basic template is there and over which you can train, then obviously man is a part of society and man is nothing without society. So, society can train man. So, how does society train? If you look at the history, it is wars and fights and conflicts. Very few people even write of peacetime history, but lot of development has happened in the peacetime. But so is when the development happened with wars, because the necessity of war and necessity of survival actually created lot of lot of progress and modernity, whether good or bad. So, then there was a parallel stream where the people always kept questioning about the basic aim of life, and obviously people must have got bored of the daily grind and they want to move forward, and that brought in a lot of teachings and religion and self-help gurus and of the modern times, meditation, yoga. India, we know how it goes. And people go to temples, to mosques, to church, and they have their own gurus, and if they can't, then they obviously go and have a psychotherapist, if nothing else. So, what is, while the mind and cognition is growing, that need for change is always there. That seems to be the pushing force of human life, that they want, in spite of the brain developing, there is something else which the mind is looking. Maybe possibly, as we have discovered, there is something else which keeps pushing, and that is emotion. So, when we think may not be actually so much as your mind is being directed by emotions. So, emotions often lead to behavioral changes, which may not be perceived by the other as being very conducive, and that probably creates conflict, and this the whole conflict itself is a big motivation for need for change. And that is where probably all that was taught always insisted on changing the thought, but are people able to change the thought? And that is what we have to discover. Before we jump on to this, what is actually happening in the brain and why people, in spite of knowing what is right, we all know, do not we? As I said, this whole lecture series will be more of a discovery of self. How we know that what is right and from wrong, unless you have been totally indoctrinated, like some terrorists maybe, that the suicide bombers, even they have been indoctrinated, but to nobody has actually talked to them, and it would be interesting to know whether they know what they are doing. They are not so deluded, because if they are really psychotic, they would not be really so smart to work their way through and do all this damage and fooling all the intelligence agencies and all. So, obviously, they are smart, their intelligence and their cognitive skills are working perfect, and emotionally also they are so charged to take this major decision of killing oneself. I am just taking this as an example. It would be interesting to know whether they know the right from the wrong. But let us forget terrorists, let us look at our own life, just introspect, because after all, when we talk of transformation later, it will be about us. If do not we know as students that we should what is the right way to study, where should our energy be directed? From ages, students have been told not to do this, do that, the whole list of do's and don'ts. There have been periods of rebel, there have been periods of hippies where students did not want to listen. Students these days also have their opinion, they know what is to be done, but still most people fall short. In our own life, especially when you talk of say an issue like corruption which affects our lives, I am just trying to relate all this life to biology, to neurosciences. And when I am saying this, I am not saying that all these things which are involuntary control should be excused and there should not be any law because it is biology which is determining. My question is, if people know what is the right and wrong, you know that you should not get too angry or too irritated with things which are beyond your control, or even on silly things, but see the number of times we do it, and all that irritability, all that anxiety of living, and all that the rather conflictual sort of misery is in all of us. It's actually increasing if you look at it. The more materialistically comfortable we are becoming, the more irritated we are becoming, isn't it? So, happiness has become something to be achieved, and you have to work hard to achieve happiness. Why? So, what is it in our heads that does not allow our right thought to prevail and actually do what is right? I am not saying that it is should be done, because obviously if it was happening, I would not be talking about transformation and cognition. There would not be so many self-help books, and there would not be people getting worried about how they want to change. And people want to change. A student wants to study well, achieve, get a job, become a big shot or whatever he wants to, and then at 50 you suddenly want to leave all this and go. It is this feeling of leaving and going. I think Gautam Buddha did it. So, Ram was sent to Vanvas. So, this is nothing new, but see the logic. You have been working towards certain things, and when you achieve it, you are not happy. Why is it happening? It is happening probably because the brain is wired in such a way that what you think in isolation it may appear very nice, but it is always covered with the basic need for survival the basic need for power, the basic need for emotions. So, emotions what we think are just expressions of a certain state or a certain perception of a situation may not be so actually. The possibility is it is the actually the emotions which have a need which they manage through cognition. I am just telling you a reverse thing, both are possible or they may both be standing somewhere in midway and asserting the whole thing. What I am trying to say is there is cognition which is thought and there is emotion which is a mental state which gives you a sense of the basic feelings, happiness, sadness, disgust, lust, or you have, so there you have higher emotions. The big question is, what I am trying to tell you is that between this which is higher? We think that cognition is higher, cognition is thought and that is why it should work. It does not seem to work, thought always does not seem to work. Why? And we think because what we think and what we act, there are two other words which are very important, action and will. So, we think that there is action, what we think, we act and whatever emotions are generated is the feeling of reward, which is partially true. But in the process, if you remember we talked last time, it is the dopamine which is pushing you to explore. So, is it possible that it is actually the emotion which makes you think and emotions which makes you act and then you think about it? Freud would have believed it. He said we are not rational beings, we do certain things and then we rationalize it, we make a meaning out of it. We will discuss about it in the next lecture. But then where does it leave the will? If I can think and I can act, I can choose, that means there is a will. We are not able to achieve what we think, go much under our benchmarks, is probably because the emotions may be they are going in different direction, and the emotions itself may be the basic reason of pushing you towards certain action. In that case, will becomes secondary to emotions and cognition. Now, this is the debate in which neuroscience is still engaged, that what is higher. There are people who say it is the cognition and there are people who say it is the emotion which is actually doing. The emotions have always been there in our existence, but they are a new entrant into understanding of our, but there is a different approach to the whole thing, and that comes from our culture, and I think I should mention it. There is something called rasa theory, which was mentioned first time in Atharvaved. It is so old, and but the real proponent of it was Bharat Muni. There is a famous treatise he has given, Nata Shastra, which is the art of the theatre, not as you know. It is on performing arts and everything about theatre, even right from the way the theatre should be built to the acting to emoting to anything which goes on the stage. There was no cinema at that time. But what is rasa? What the Western psychology has talked about as emotion and split it into primary emotion and higher complex emotion like love and altruism and all that. This is not exactly translatable into emotions because it is not that concrete. It is slightly more complex dimension of emotion. it has been equated with words like flavor. What is the rasa? Essence, sentiment, passion, mood, or maybe nothing. But aren't these words which we use? Why I am insisting on understanding this, because by the end of it we should be able to know what cognition and emotion is. So, when an actor, for example, consider yourself as an actor and you are supposed to go and give an interview. So, obviously, you would have prepared your mind for it. You would have prepared for your knowledge base, your dress and the way you are going to behave, the way you are going to talk. You would have done it with your thought, wasn't it? But when you are going to the interview, your mood state and how you are feeling, is it in your control? So, you are acting in the world and maybe your part of it is not in your control, but look at an actor, look at any great actor from Hollywood to India, look at Mr. Amitabh Bachchan or Mr. Al Pacino, or if they are doing a role of an angry man, obviously they would have practiced with their thought and they train it with the dialogues and the way they are going to walk and the way they are, it's all practiced, it's nothing natural. Amitabh Bachchan is not what he is on the screen. But is it that? Is it just that? He would not appear an angry young man if he would just have practiced, remember the dialogue and the way of walking. His whole being has to go into it. And where is that being? That being is the very interesting thing. Look at it. If you remember, just go back few slides, you look at it, there was a facial display I was talking about. In a startle reflex, their whole body was there. So, in all emotions, the emotions are not separate from your body. A thought may be separate, you can still think, you can sit in a chair, sit still and still think. But if you get angry, your whole body will react. If you are happy, your whole body will react, your facial display, your body muscles, your movement, your heart rate, everything. Now, that is what the actor has to put into the role. So, imagine rasa, and that is rasa, the bhav. So, an actor does something more than the emotion and something more than the cognition. He brings cognition and emotion together by studying that there is a certain bodily change, there is a certain change of look, the facial display, the muscular tension, everything, which actually takes the whole thing to a different dimension. We do it also in our life. While I am teaching you, I am acting like a teacher with my knowledge base and my being is into it. So, what is the difference between acting and all? If some actor is showing a certain act on a stage, he may be doing lot of body language and all, but that is a training to the emotion from cognition, because he has decided. So, say take anger. Now, actor has to show anger and there is a person who is angry in a real situation. Showing anger, so he will think, he will watch how angry people behave, train the mind and act. Angry person will train the mind to say body expressions. angry person will have a body expression, but he will also have increased heart rate, his stress hormone will go up. Actors are able to avoid. So, this is the difference between acting and showing a emotion vis-a-vis actually feeling that emotion. Probably the autonomic response, your heart rate, your respiration, your stress hormone, that is different. Here it is less, here it is very high. So, showing anger and being angry becomes two different things. If you show anger, you can act like this, you can train your body muscles to do all that, but your heart may still not be at a very normal level. If you get angry in the real situation, your whole being goes into it, and that is because here cognition is ruled by emotion in the real situation. It is vice versa in acting. I hope you understand. You can train your mind to express a certain emotion without the real autonomic expressions of it. Vis-a-vis in real situation, it is the emotion which just come like a burst. Now, this whole concept is used in theatre and acting. So, this is what we were talking about bhav. Bharat, there are 49 bhavs. It is claim over the range of human experience. So, when I am talking of range and human experience, is not just emotions, it is this dimension which emerges from cognition and emotion. Why? We will talk in the next lecture. So, this is the whole list of Shringar, we all know this: Shringar, Rasa, Hasya, Karuna, pathetic and kindly; Raudra, Veer Ras, Bhayanak, Adbhut, Shant Ras. So, what are the essential bhav? Has, shok, krodh, which is anger, and this is the conversion to our psychological things. This is about love, which is a higher complex. Has, laughter; sorrow, we know this. This is anger, heroism. This is another higher complex bhav, it may not be an emotion. Fear is a primary emotion, this is a primary emotion, this is a primary emotion, this is another, let me call it a cognitive emotion for the example. And they went on to the extent of associating color with it, but anyway you can. So, this is what brings us to whole blocks of existence. It is the interplay between cognition and emotion which actually give you the meaning and the frame of existence. So, what we will do is I will end up here and maybe pick up and try to build up further, taking this block and see what does it mean for life. Thank you.